In this episode, we're going to connect the idea of AI security tools to what actually happens in a living organization. Signals are collected, alerts are raised, people investigate, and a response is carried out under real-time pressure. Beginners often imagine that buying or enabling a tool automatically creates security, but tools only create value when their output becomes part of routine behavior. That routine behavior is what we mean by workflows, and workflows are the difference between a tool that produces data and a tool that reduces harm. You will learn how monitoring, alerting, and response fit together as a chain, why the handoffs between steps matter, and what it looks like to implement tools in a way that makes them usable rather than overwhelming. By the end, you should be able to explain how a tool's signals become decisions and how decisions become actions. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Monitoring is the ongoing collection of information about what an AI system is doing and what is happening around it. That information can include who is using the system, what kinds of requests are being made, what outputs are produced, and what downstream actions are triggered. Monitoring also includes health signals, like error rates, latency, and failures in integrations, because reliability problems can create security problems when systems behave unpredictably. A core beginner idea is that monitoring is not the same thing as alerting. You can monitor many things quietly and only alert on a smaller set of conditions, because alerts are meant to interrupt humans and demand attention. Good implementation starts by deciding what must be observed broadly for investigation later, and what must generate immediate attention when it crosses a line. Alerting is the step where monitored signals are turned into a message that says something may be wrong and someone should look. Alerts can come from many kinds of AI security tools, such as tools that detect sensitive data and prompts, tools that detect policy violations and outputs, tools that notice unusual usage patterns, or tools that detect drift in model behavior. The temptation is to alert on everything because it feels safer, but that usually backfires because humans stop trusting alerts when they are too frequent or too vague. A more effective approach is to design alerts that represent a meaningful risk story, like possible data leakage, possible misuse probing, or possible integrity degradation. Each alert should have a clear reason it exists, and it should answer a beginner-friendly question. If this is real, what could go wrong and how quickly? Response workflows are the set of steps people take after an alert arrives, and they must be predictable and repeatable. Response includes triage, which is deciding whether the alert is real and how severe it might be. It includes investigation, which is collecting evidence to understand what happened, what systems are affected, and what data or users might be at risk. It includes containment, which is stopping the harm from spreading, and it includes recovery, which is restoring safe operation. Beginners should learn that response is not just a technical activity. It is also communication, decision-making, and coordination. Tools support response by providing evidence, automating safe actions, and creating records, but tools cannot replace the human judgment needed to decide what to do in messy situations. A practical way to implement AI security tools into workflows is to start with the places where the AI system touches the world. The first touchpoint is input, which might be user prompts, uploaded documents, or data pulled from other systems. The second touchpoint is processing, where the model is invoked and the system decides what to do with the request. The third touchpoint is output, where responses are delivered to users or passed to downstream services. The fourth touchpoint is downstream impact, such as an action taken, a recommendation used, or a record updated. Implementation means placing monitoring and controls at these touchpoints so you can see and intervene where it matters. If you only monitor the model itself and ignore the inputs and outputs, you can miss the most meaningful signs of misuse and leakage. When implementing monitoring, you want to make sure the data you collect is useful for later investigation without being reckless about privacy. Monitoring data might include metadata like user identity, time, source application, and request type, and it might include content like the prompt and the response. The decision about content logging is sensitive because prompts and outputs can contain personal or confidential information. A good workflow balances the need for evidence with the need to minimize unnecessary exposure. One approach is to log content in a controlled way, such as storing it with strict access controls and limited retention, while also storing safer metadata more broadly. The important beginner concept is that logs are evidence, and evidence must be trustworthy, protected, and available when needed. Implementing alerting starts with choosing thresholds and patterns that represent meaningful risk. A threshold might be a sudden increase in blocked prompts, an unusual spike in requests from a single account, or repeated attempts to trigger restricted behavior. A pattern might be repeated probing prompts that slowly change wording, or outputs that increasingly contain internal details that should not be revealed. The goal is not to catch every strange event, but to catch the events that are most likely to lead to harm. This is also where tuning begins, because your first version of alerts is rarely perfect. You should expect a period where alerts are noisy, and the workflow must include a way to review and adjust them without abandoning monitoring entirely. A major part of implementation is deciding where alerts go and how they become actionable work. In many organizations, alerts feed into a centralized monitoring team or a ticketing process, but the exact destination matters less than clarity. An alert should arrive where someone is responsible for reading it, acknowledging it, and taking a next step. If alerts go into a shared inbox that no one owns, you have created an illusion of safety without real response capability. A simple but powerful practice is to define an on-call responsibility or a rotating duty, so there is always a known first responder. Another practice is to categorize alerts by severity so the team can focus on what matters most under pressure. Implementation is not complete until you can point to who receives alerts and what they do first. Triage is the first decision point after an alert, and good tools make triage faster by providing context. Context includes what triggered the alert, what the recent history is for that user or system, and what evidence is available in logs. For example, if the alert suggests possible sensitive data leakage, triage needs to know whether the content contained patterns of private data, whether the output was delivered externally, and whether the request came from a normal user or an unusual source. If the alert suggests drift, triage needs to know whether there was a recent model change, a data pipeline change, or a new usage pattern. Tools that provide only a red warning without details force humans to hunt for evidence, which delays response. A well-implemented workflow puts the evidence close to the alert so triage can decide quickly. Investigation workflows are where AI security tools can either shine or fail, depending on how well data is connected. Investigators often need to follow a chain: a user request, the system's processing, the model's output, and any downstream action. They may need to answer whether the event was accidental or malicious, whether it was isolated or repeated, and whether other systems are affected. Tools should support this by linking events with identifiers, timestamps, and traceable relationships. If the logs are fragmented across systems with no way to correlate them, investigation becomes slow and uncertain. For beginners, it helps to think of investigation like reconstructing a story from clues, and the tool's job is to keep the clues organized and trustworthy. Response workflows must include containment options that are safe to use under stress. Containment might mean temporarily disabling a risky feature, restricting access for a suspicious account, blocking certain types of prompts, or pausing an integration that is leaking data. The best containment actions are reversible, because you may need to restore service once you understand what happened. Tools can help by automating containment when confidence is high, but automation must be carefully controlled to avoid creating new outages. A common mistake is to automate a harsh action based on a weak signal, which can disrupt legitimate use and reduce trust in the security program. A better approach is to automate small, low-risk actions, such as increasing logging detail or requiring extra approval for certain requests, while reserving disruptive actions for human decision. Communication is an often overlooked part of implementation, but it is essential for response workflows. When an alert indicates a possible incident, people need to know who to notify, what information to share, and what decisions must be made. Tools can support this by generating clear summaries of what was observed, including timelines, affected components, and initial severity estimates. These summaries should be factual and avoid dramatic language, because early information is often incomplete. A good workflow also ensures communication does not leak sensitive details to people who do not need them. For AI incidents, it is especially important to communicate what content might have been exposed and what safeguards were in place, because stakeholders will ask whether the system is trustworthy. Implementation should make communication easier, not harder, by having structured evidence ready. Another critical part of implementing tools into workflows is testing the workflow itself, not just the tool. It is possible for a tool to work perfectly and still fail to improve security if people do not know what to do with it. A simple test is to simulate an alert and walk through the steps. Who sees it? How quickly they respond? What evidence they can access? What containment they can perform? And how they document decisions. The goal is to find friction points, like missing access to logs, unclear escalation paths, or confusing alert messages. This kind of testing is not about typing commands or running labs. It is about validating that the human process works. A workflow that only works when a particular expert is available is fragile, and good implementation aims for resilience. As we close, the main lesson is that implementing AI security tools is really about building a chain from observation to action. Monitoring collects evidence. Alerting turns evidence into a prompt for attention, and response workflows turn attention into safe decisions and controlled actions. Tools must be placed at meaningful touchpoints. Their signals must be tuned to avoid noise, and their output must land in a place with clear ownership. Investigation needs connected logs and context, containment needs reversible and thoughtful actions, and communication needs factual summaries and discipline sharing. When these pieces fit together, security tools become part of daily operations rather than decoration. That is how you move from having tools to having real security, where early signals lead to timely response and measurable reduction in harm.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.